In this video, we're finally going to build something for our domain layer. So currently we only have, like, in the shared directory, we just have one kind of shared bit of code, which is the Ktor factory. And we don't have anything in domain layer. We don't have any like core business models for our project. And this is a recipe application. So of course we need something to model like what a recipe even is. Like, you know, what kind of fields does a recipe have? Of course you need a primary key, a title, you know, an image, a description, ingredients, all that kind of stuff. Basically everything that you saw get from the API in the previous video when we used Postman, we need to kind of model that for our application. So let's go into the shared directory here. So I'm in shared and expand common main here, and we're going to go into the main package directory in here and create a new package and call this domain. And then inside of domain, we're going to create another new package and call that model. And now finally, inside of model, we're going to create a Kotlin file and call this Kotlin file recipe. And this will be a data class. You can click on data class there. So now what does it mean to be a recipe? Well, if we refer to Postman, the software that we took a look at in the previous video or last couple of videos, if we get a recipe from the network, these are all the fields that it has. So it has primary key, title, publisher, featured image, rating, source URL, description, cooking instructions, ingredients, and then some date stuff down here. So what are the fields that this recipe needs? Well, we need a ID, that's going to be an integer. We need a title, so value title, and that will be a string. So far so good, right? Like these fields are going to be the same in both the caching model and the networking model. Nothing will be different so far. We have the publisher, so the person who will publish that recipe. We have the featured image, which is going to be a string URL to an image that's saved on the server. Then we have the rating, which is an integer. So far, like everything, nothing's different, right? Then we have source URL, that's going to be a string. Now we're going to add the ingredients list, which is where it's going to start to differ. So with respect to the networking model that we build later, it's actually going to be the same, but SQLite, when we start building that model for modeling the caching data, SQLite does not have the capability to store a list data structure. So we're going to need to store a list of strings. So that's one way that it's going to differ. Next is going to be the dates. The dates are also going to be different depending on, you know, what model we're talking about. So for our core business model, our core recipe model, we're going to use local date time, which is from the colonX datetime dependency. And just to remind you of where that came from, let me just go into the shared build.gradle. That's this dependency right here, colonX datetime. This is the, you know, shared Kotlin library that we're going to be using to handle all of our dates. Now I'm going to copy that line and call the next one date updated, and this will be also a local datetime. So taking a look at these, if we open up Postman and take a look at the date information that we get from the API, there's two kind of options here. One is a string formatted date that is really not helpful. I shouldn't have even added this to the API because having pre-formatted dates come from an API is never a good idea. You know, imagine, you know, you have different time zones and two people are getting the information from different time zones. Those dates are going to be confusing and meaningless. So having a pre-formatted date coming from an API is not a good idea. When I built the API, I thought, oh, that'll be convenient. I'll just return the string formatted date, but I didn't think of, like, practically that's not a good thing to teach because practically most apps or all apps are going to be multiple regions. So having that is not helpful. So then I updated the data structures on the API and we return long dates, which are much better because they can be formatted to a certain way, and then you can parse them depending on, you know, where the client is or whatever. So the dates that we're going to be using in this course are the long dates. So compare that data structure with you know, local datetime for our core business model. Obviously, if we were to use this to parse the data from the network, it's not going to be able to parse, you know, those dates. So that's just an example of where our data structures are going to differ with respect to the core business model, the caching model, and the networking model. Those three are going to be different because the databases where that data is stored are all different. So now in the next video, we are going to work on the that networking model that I was talking about. So it's going to be a variation of the recipe model that we just built. Think of this as, this is our model for parsing data coming from the network.